You know what parents do almost automatically, every single day, always with the best intentions in the world. They see a behavior in their child that bothers them, something that makes them anxious or embarrassed or frustrated, and they immediately try to fix it, correct it, make it stop. And I get it. That impulse comes from love. It comes from wanting to raise a child who is okay, who fits in, who isn't going to struggle. Parenting is full of moments where you have to act before you have time to think, and so you act on instinct. Most of the time, that works fine. But there are specific situations where the instinct is wrong, not because you are a bad parent, but because the behavior in front of you is being misread. But here's what research in developmental psychology and neuroscience has been quietly establishing for the last 20 years, and what most parenting advice still hasn't caught up with. Many of the behaviors that parents label as problematic are not problems at all. They are signals of a nervous system working exactly as it should, signals of a brain building itself in the right direction, signals of a child developing the precise capacities they will need to navigate adult life. The instinct to correct is not wrong. It comes from the right place. But sometimes, correcting the wrong thing at the wrong moment in the wrong way can interfere with something you actually want to protect. And because these things look disruptive on the surface, they are easy to misread. Today, I want to walk you through 5 of these behaviors. 5 things you are probably trying to stop, or at least worried about, that the science suggests are better understood than eliminated. Some of them might surprise you. Let's get into it. Number 1, the child who asks 1,000 questions about everything, including the ones that put you on the spot. If you have a child who asks why people die, how babies are made, why that person on the subway looks different, why the sky is blue and the grass is green, and then follows up every answer with another why, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is relentless, and it is the kind of question that catches you off guard, that you want to close down quickly with, "We'll talk about it later," or "You don't say things like that," or if you're really tired, just a change of subject. The problem is that in the child's mind, "We'll talk about it later" is a message, not a scheduling update, a message. And the message is, some things are not to be asked. Children who ask uncomfortable questions are not being rude or difficult. They are exercising what psychologists call epistemic curiosity, the active drive to understand how the world works, including the parts that don't add up, the contradictions, the things adults seem to avoid. And this matters enormously, because epistemic curiosity is one of the most robust early predictors of future critical intelligence. Jerome Bruner spent decades researching how children construct knowledge, and his conclusion was consistent. Children who were allowed to ask difficult questions, who were treated as genuine inquirers rather than managed, became adults capable of independent, critical thought. Now, you don't need to have the right answer on the spot. In fact, the most powerful thing you can do is model uncertainty well. "I don't know, let's figure it out together," is one of the most educational things you can say to a child. Because you're not just answering a question. You're teaching them that uncertainty is not a threat. It's a starting point. And that is a lesson that will serve them far longer than whatever specific answer you might have given. There is also something worth saying about the questions that feel genuinely awkward, the ones about death or bodies or why the world is unfair. Those are not accidental. Children gravitate toward the things adults seem to avoid, precisely because those things feel important. Treating those questions with the same openness as the easy ones sends a message that lasts. That kind of trust is built slowly, in small moments exactly like these. Number 2, the child who pushes back when told what to do. This is perhaps the behavior that wears parents down the most. The child who says no, who argues, who negotiates every single thing. Bedtime, meals, what shoes to wear, why they have to turn off the screen right now and not in 5 minutes. Who, at the end of a long day, is genuinely, exhaustingly difficult to get through dinner with. And the automatic response, the one that makes complete sense in the moment, is, "I need to teach them to obey." I need to establish authority. I need to make it clear who is in charge here. But here is the detail worth sitting with. Diana Baumrind's landmark research on parenting styles, the framework that defined authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive parenting back in the 1960s, and has since been replicated across cultures and decades of follow-up studies, shows something quite specific. The children who develop the greatest capacity for autonomy and the ability to resist peer pressure in adolescence are not the ones who were taught blind compliance. They are the ones who, at home, had space to challenge adult decisions through dialogue. Not children given free rein, but children who understood that boundaries existed and had reasons, and who are also allowed to question those reasons. A child who pushes back is not trying to undermine you. They are testing whether the world is responsive, whether limits make sense, whether they have a voice. What you can do is not extinguish that impulse, because that impulse, properly channeled, is exactly what will help them say no to the wrong people later in life. Explain the why. Let them disagree on the how, not on everything. The difference between a child who is difficult and a child with strong character is, more often than not, the environment that surrounds them. The key shift in practice is small but significant. Instead of "because I said so," try "because, and here's why." You're not giving up authority. You're making it legible. And a child who understands the reasoning behind a rule is far more likely to internalize it than one who simply learned to comply when an adult's voice got firm enough. Number 3, the child who has an imaginary friend, even past age 5. This one tends to make parents quietly nervous. They wonder whether it's normal, whether they should gently redirect, whether it means the child is lonely or confused, or having trouble distinguishing fantasy from reality. The short answer, based on the research, is no, and actually quite the opposite. Marjorie Taylor, a developmental psychologist at the University of Oregon, has conducted some of the most thorough longitudinal work on imaginary companions. She followed children with imaginary friends and children without over extended periods, and the pattern she found was consistent. Children who created and maintained imaginary friends showed, on average, a more sophisticated theory of mind. That is the technical term for the ability to understand that other people have thoughts, feelings, perspectives, and beliefs that are different from your own. They also showed higher narrative creativity and greater cognitive flexibility. Think about what creating an imaginary friend actually requires. The child has to construct an independent perspective with their own likes, moods, and reactions. They have to manage a relationship that exists entirely inside their own mind, which means they are practicing emotional attunement without any external cues to rely on. They are developing emotional language in a context that is completely safe, where nothing goes wrong if they get it slightly wrong. That process, that internal simulation of another mind, is precisely what becomes empathy. So leave them be. Or better yet, ask questions. What is this friend like? What do they like to do? What kind of day did they have today? You'll be surprised what you learn, and you'll be supporting something genuinely valuable without realizing it. It is also worth noting that imaginary friends tend to disappear on their own when the child no longer needs them. They are not a crutch that keeps the child from developing real relationships. In Taylor's research, children with imaginary friends were equally socially engaged as those without. They simply had an additional internal resource. Think of it less like a substitute for connection and more like a private rehearsal space for it. Number 4, the child who cries too much. Let me say this directly. There is no such thing as a child who cries too much. There is an adult who is uncomfortable with the intensity of their child's emotions. I understand that's not easy to hear. But it's an important distinction because the discomfort belongs to the adult, and acting on it in certain ways transfers a cost to the child. Alan Shore's research on affective regulation, and this work is among the most cited in clinical psychology, shows that children who are encouraged, even subtly and implicitly, to suppress tears, to control emotions before they've actually processed them, to be brave or be big, develop nervous systems that handle stress less efficiently over time. Not because they are fragile, but because they were never given the chance to complete what Shore calls the emotional cycle. Feel, express, return to equilibrium. When that cycle is interrupted repeatedly, the nervous system learns to manage emotion by not fully feeling it, which works short-term and costs dearly long-term. A child who cries a lot is not a child in unusual pain. It is a child who still has full access to their emotional experience. That is an asset, not a symptom. The real vulnerability appears when that crying consistently meets an adult who cannot sit with it calmly, who rushes to stop it, dismisses it, or becomes visibly distressed by it. Because then the child learns that strong emotions are dangerous, that showing what you feel is risky, that the safest move is to keep it inside. What actually builds emotional resilience is co-regulation. Your nervous system, calm and present, becomes the external scaffold for theirs.
You don't need to fix the feeling. You need to stay there while it moves through.
That is the entire mechanism. Don't scold the crying.
And practically, this is simpler than it sounds. It doesn't mean never setting limits on behavior.
A child can be upset and still not be allowed to hit. Those are two separate things. What you're protecting is not the behavior. It's the feeling underneath it. You can hold a boundary and still communicate. I see that you're really upset right now, and that's okay. I'm here.
That combination, structure and presence together, is what Shore's research points to as the foundation of secure emotional development.
Number 5, the child who gets bored. This is probably the most counterintuitive one, especially right now, when we live surrounded by more stimulation than any generation in history. A bored child feels like a failure of the environment, like something is missing. Like you should be providing an activity, a class, a screen, something, anything to fill that gap. And the instinct is to fill it immediately. But genuine boredom, not the frustrated restlessness that comes from interrupted stimulation, but the quiet, directionless state of having nothing particular to do, is one of the most productive conditions a developing brain can be in. Sandy Mann and Rebecca Cadman at the University of Central Lancashire ran a study where they had participants perform a deeply boring task, copying phone numbers by hand, and then asked them to complete a creative exercise. The bored group produced significantly more ideas and more original ones. In children, the mechanism is the same but amplified, because children's brains are still forming.
Boredom forces the activation of what neuroscientists call the default mode network,
The set of brain regions responsible for imagination, spontaneous thought, self-reflection, and the integration of different experiences.
That is the neural space where invented games are born,
Where stories come from, where a child solves a problem no adult thought to hand them. A child who can tolerate boredom is building something rare, the capacity to generate interest from within, rather than always depending on external sources to provide it. In a world that will increasingly reward self-direction, that is not a minor skill.
This doesn't mean engineering boredom or refusing to engage with your child. It means leaving gaps.
Not every weekend needs to be scheduled.
Not every quiet moment needs to be filled with a screen or a structured activity.
Boredom needs a little time and a little space to do its work, and then often something genuinely surprising comes out of it. Don't fill every silence. Let something happen in it. Here's what I want to leave you with. None of these 5 behaviors is easy to live with. They are tiring. They challenge your patience and your authority. They put you in uncomfortable positions on a regular basis. And correcting them, shutting them down, smoothing them over is genuinely easier in the short term. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. There are days when you are exhausted and you just need the crying to stop or the negotiating to end. And responding with curiosity rather than control feels like too much to ask. That is real, and it is human, and it does not make you a bad parent.
But when you do have the bandwidth, when you can pause even briefly before reacting, the question that changes everything is not, how do I make this stop? The question is, what is my child communicating to me right now? And what does that tell me about where they are? Children don't have a large vocabulary for their inner states. They don't say, I'm processing a difficult emotion, or I'm testing the limits of the social world to build my own sense of agency. They say no. They cry. They get bored. They ask embarrassing questions in public. They talk to someone only they can see. And in most of those moments, if you look past the behavior to what it's doing developmentally, there is something working, something that is growing exactly as it should. Your job is not to raise a quiet, compliant child. Your job is to stay close enough to tell the difference between a signal and a problem, between a child who is developing and a child who is struggling. And that distinction requires a kind of attention that goes beyond managing behavior. It requires actually watching what the behavior is doing, what it produces, what it seems to be rehearsing. The 5 behaviors we talked about today are hard to sit with. They are inconvenient, but they are also, each in their own way, signs of a mind doing serious work, a mind building itself. And when you see them through that lens, even for a moment, the whole dynamic shifts. You stop trying to eliminate something and start trying to understand it. That shift, small as it sounds, changes how your child experiences you. It changes what they believe they can bring to you. And that, more than any specific technique or strategy, is what actually shapes who they become. And sometimes, more often than you might expect, that shift in perspective is everything.